Welcome back to the deep dive. If you are a developer, a founder, or, running a small business, you're probably rushing to integrate AI. And that's smart.
It is.
But let's be honest, the common fear is often just getting the AI right, which model, which API.
Right. The technical part.
Exactly. But we think the real challenge, the one that can just bankrupt your reputation overnight, is using it without destroying the trust you've spent years building.
That's the critical pivot. We've all watched major corporations tie themselves in knots trying to implement these, complex AI governance frameworks.
Hundreds of pages long.
Yeah, and for a small team, that's just immediate paralysis.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to cut through all of that complexity. We're providing you with a highly practical, minimalist, 6-point ethics checklist.
One designed specifically for speed, responsibility, and reputation protection.
Exactly.
We're drilling down into insights from JB Parashar, who's the founder of Rethink AI, and he forces us to reframe the entire conversation.
He does. He treats AI ethics not as some boring legal lecture, but as a core, measurable business advantage.
And that perspective is everything. For a small business, reputation is your only true engine.
Right. Parashar's thesis is that complex governance is just. It's unnecessary noise. You need a simple, actionable checklist, one that acts as an immediate defense for 4 very fragile assets: your customers, your brand,
Your team, and your long-term credibility.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Why does it have to be so minimalist?
Well, because trust in this new AI era is just astonishingly fragile.
You could have the most innovative product, but one careless mistake from an automated output, a mistake that leaks data or misrepresents what you do.
It can cost you more in reputation damage than a whole year of marketing spent trying to win that trust back. It's about immediate protection.
So this checklist is like a behavioral firewall.
That's a great way to put it. Instead of seeing these 6 points as rules that slow you down, you should see them as the 6 critical maintenance tasks you need to keep your business engine running fast. We're framing reputation as the most important KPI when you're implementing any new AI system.
Precisely.
Let's jump straight in then to the foundation of that trust, starting with the most critical liability you carry: data. The first rule is simple and absolute: privacy first.
And it's distilled into one maxim that every single developer should have in their mind. Don't feed the machine what you wouldn't post publicly.
This is where most of the early mistakes happen, isn't it?
It is. The biggest liability a small business faces isn't usually some flaw in the massive language model itself. It's what an employee who's rushing to automate a task puts into the prompt box.
Because if you're using a standard API or some public tool, you have to assume that prompt is being used for training, or at
It's
least...
stored long term.
We know what sensitive data is generally, but what does the source specifically highlight that should never go into an AI tool because the liability is just too high?
The source has a really clear list, and it goes beyond the obvious. So, of course, you have to prohibit customer personal data, what we call PII.
Names, phone numbers, addresses, account IDs, that kind of thing.
Right. And payment details are absolutely out of the question.
That makes sense. But the source introduces a great nuance that I really want to highlight.
Yes, the nuance is critical. Internal communications. You have to prohibit inputting private chats, customer support tickets, or, confidential complaints that still have identifiers attached to them.
And that's the developer trap, right?
It is.
You think, oh, I'm just summarizing 50 recent complaints to see a trend, but if those names or account numbers are still embedded in there, you've just fed highly sensitive customer data to a third-party tool.
A potentially unsecured one. That's a massive breach just waiting to happen.
So what else is on the prohibition list?
Well, your own internal confidential documents. Things like your intellectual property, unreleased financial data, and absolutely critical, highly sensitive files like one-time passwords, OTPs, or any kind of credentials.
So the rule is absolute.
It is. If it can harm someone or your business, if it leaks, it doesn't go in. No exceptions.
Okay, but I'm running lean. Let's play devil's advocate. If I'm a small developer and I have this huge spreadsheet of customer feedback I need summarized to hit a deadline, uploading it to ChatGPT saves me 20 hours. What's the real cost of taking that risk?
The cost is not just immediate, it's long-term regulatory exposure. If that model vendor gets breached, you are legally responsible for feeding their breach with your customers' sensitive data.
So you're facing fines, lawsuits.
And the immediate collapse of trust with those very same customers. 20 hours of savings is just not worth a 2-year recovery effort.
Okay, that clearly illustrates the risk of role one. So here's where it gets really interesting. Moving from securing the data to protecting your brand integrity. That brings us to rule number 2, truth over hype.
Yeah.
This means ensuring AI, which is designed to sound supremely confident, doesn't create false confidence in your product or your service.
That's just a matter of business integrity. I mean, we've all interacted with generative AI that sounds incredibly convincing, even when it's completely hallucinating. A huge company might be able to absorb the hit of a product description error, but a small business that relies on precise claims cannot. You have to put guardrails around AI generation.
So if I'm using AI to write my marketing copy, where's the line? What specifically should a small business never allow AI to generate?
It all boils down to evidence and deliverability. The source emphasizes 2 core prohibitions. First, never let AI promise something the business can't actually deliver.
Or exaggerate credentials.
Exactly. And second, and this is a fast track to ruin, never let AI fabricate case studies or invent testimonials.
Hold on, I want to challenge that. If I'm trying to win a big client and I know my service can deliver the results, but I just don't have a perfect case study yet, isn't generating a simulated case study based on internal modeling just aggressive marketing? Why is that such a liability?
Because you are actively publishing a lie, not a projection. If
Yeah.
you're fabricating data or inventing a testimonial from a customer who doesn't exist, that is intentional deceit. The moment you're caught, and you will be, you haven't just lost that one client. You have eroded your long-term credibility with everyone else who saw that false claim. You've violated your pact with the market.
So the bottom line here is that your automated content needs to meet the exact same truth standard as content written by your CEO.
Yes.
If it isn't absolutely true, it's not marketing. It's a liability that destroys credibility instantly.
Exactly. Credibility takes years to build and seconds to lose.
Okay, moving into operations and accountability. The third point shifts focus to your internal processes. Human accountability. AI assists. Humans own.
Hmm.
We know AI is a powerful assistant, summarizing documents, drafting emails, but where does the human responsibility step in and take absolute, final ownership?
This rule is essential because it defines the boundary between a tool and a decision maker. AI is fantastic for efficiency, but it lacks context, it lacks empathy, and it certainly lacks the legal ability to sign on the dotted line.
So a human must be the final editor.
And the final decision maker for anything that's high stakes.
But doesn't insisting on human review for every critical step, doesn't that negate the speed benefit of using AI in the first place? How can small businesses afford that slowdown?
That's the right question to ask, but you have to look at it as a cost avoidance measure.
Okay.
The cost of a human spending 5 minutes reviewing a pricing quote is negligible compared to the cost of letting an AI accidentally send a quote with the wrong terms, leading to a legal dispute and a massive time drain later.
So it's quality over automated speed.
It protects the business's bottom line.
So what are those key decisions that must remain human-owned, even if AI drafted the initial response or suggestion?
They fall primarily into 4 categories where the risk exposure is highest. A human must own the final customer response, especially sensitive ones.
To make sure the tone and context are right.
Exactly. A human must own the final pricing or terms that are agreed upon. Any final policy decisions.
Things that set precedents.
Right. Those must be human approved. And critically, final escalations.
So you can't just tell a customer, well, the algorithm calculated that refund amount.
Absolutely not. The rule is simple and it's absolute. There is no defensible position in business where you can say AI said so. A human must take ultimate ownership.
That human is your necessary safety valve.
That's right.
And that leads us perfectly into the 4th rule, which is all about internal training and preventing passive harm. It's fairness and respect.
And the instruction here is blunt. Don't automate disrespect.
What does that mean exactly?
This rule targets the insidious creep of bias or, lack of empathy when interactions become automated. When you use AI to handle routine replies or screenings, you risk automating responses that are just tone deaf.
Or lack contextual sensitivity.
Or even worse, they subtly embody biases that were inherent in the training data.
Give us a concrete example of automating disrespect. What did that look like in practice?
Well, think about an automated customer service chatbot. If a customer is clearly frustrated or emotional, an aggressive or overly defensive AI reply, even if it's just trying to uphold company policy, can instantly shatter that relationship.
Okay, that's a clear one.
Or, maybe more subtly, The AI output defaults to using language that excludes or stereotypes certain demographics based purely on biased data it was trained on.
Right. So the output might not be overtly rude, but it might reduce human dignity by making the customer feel ignored or categorized or manipulated.
Exactly. The source calls out three things to actively avoid: output that stereotypes people or insults customers, output that becomes aggressive in replies, even defensively aggressive, and output that manipulates emotions unfairly.
Like trying to guilt a customer into not canceling a subscription.
Precisely. The underlying rule is automation should never reduce human dignity. If you wouldn't say it to a customer's face, the machine shouldn't either. It needs a human gut check for empathy.
Which means we have to train the AI to know its own limits. That leads us beautifully into the final 2 points, which function as your procedural safety nets.
And safety nets are essential. They define what happens when the first four rules get tested.
The 5th point tackles transparency, addressing that common question of when to disclose AI use fits transparency when it matters. The source suggests you don't need a disclaimer on every automatically generated email subject line. It's about timing and sensitivity.
That's the key distinction. We aren't demanding transparency just for the sake of it, because that would just overwhelm the user. We demand transparency in the sensitive areas where clarity is absolutely mandatory.
Because a person's life or outcome is being affected.
That's it.
And what defines sensitive in this context?
Sensitivity is defined by whether the AI is involved in something consequential. If AI is assisting in support decisions, screening job candidates, determining eligibility for a service, or making approvals, that's where clarity is required.
So if a decision is being made about their livelihood or their access to a resource,
They deserve to know an algorithm played a part.
so if a small business uses an AI tool to rapidly screen the first 50 job applications, the applicant deserves clarity that they were screened by an algorithm, even if a human ultimately signs the rejection letter.
Absolutely. The rule is, if the process affects a person's outcome, they deserve clarity. Transparency in those moments is how you defend the integrity of your decision-making process.
And that leads us to the final rule. This is the ultimate emergency brake on automation. Safe defaults. When unsure, escalate.
This is non-negotiable risk management. You must predefine your escalation rules. You have to detail the specific high-stakes situations that immediately override the automation and hand the reins to a human.
Guaranteeing the business minimizes risk when the stakes are highest.
That's the whole point.
Give us those specific mandatory escalation triggers. When should the automation always stop, no matter how smart the model thinks it is?
The list is very practical. It focuses on situations demanding judgment and liability protection. First, an angry customer. That requires human empathy to de-escalate.
Of course.
Second, any refund, liability, or legal issue must be human-led. Third, the source specifically calls out medical or financial advice, which carries immense regulatory liability.
Can't have an AI giving that out.
Never. And fourth, any safety risk whatsoever.
That covers the 4 scenarios where relying on an automated script would be both unhelpful and, frankly, legally perilous.
Correct. The overall rule here is that high-stakes situations always stay human-led. Your automation should be designed to fail safely and gracefully into a human's lap.
Protecting the business from unnecessary risk.
That's right.
That brings us to the end of the 6-point checklist. It feels like we just mapped an entire AI compliance framework into 6, memorable points.
And that's the point. If we connect this back to the bigger picture, the leadership insight from the source is the single most important takeaway. Ethics is not a cost. It's how small businesses build trust faster than massive, slow-moving brands.
Tell us more about that competitive angle, because that makes these rules feel less like homework and more like strategy.
Well, big brands can hide behind vast budgets and legal teams when they make a mistake. Small businesses survive purely on reputation and direct accountability. Therefore, adopting this kind of simple, transparent, and human-centric ethics checklist isn't just optional protection. It is a competitive differentiator. You build market trust by proving every single day that you use AI responsibly.
And that you always prioritize the customer relationship over the automation shortcut.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you? The idea here is that this 6-point checklist cuts through all that typical complexity of AI governance. It immediately frames reputation as the most important KPI in the AI era.
It's not about following 50 rules. It's about protecting those 4 assets: your customers, your brand, your team, and your credibility.
So if you leave this deep dive with one thought, what should it be?
It should be this: your reputation is your competitive engine, And this checklist is the required maintenance plan.
The implicit contrast here is stark. If trust is the only real competitive advantage a small business has against big tech, what is the dollar cost of waiting even one more month to implement these 6 safe defaults and risk that one automated mistake that could destroy everything?